Javier Novoa Show, the first episode after a long time. I am your host, Javier Novoa, and here we talk about geopolitics, investing, money, and all things political. And I am your host, Javier Novoa. I'm an entrepreneur, investor, podcaster, and we have a crazy show for you today, guys, because the world is running scared. There are many different systems converging, so to speak, at once. We have a lot to talk about, especially for those of us who are investors. I was reading over today this book, The Ethics of Liberty by Marianne Rothbard. This book itself, I got about 20 years ago, guys, in a half-price books. And this is basically the Bible of libertarianism. And in a minute, people are going to be saying that I'm some kind of socialist. I am not. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool libertarian. But I think this is pertinent to libertarianism, what we're going to be talking about here. And that is the highlight of the show, the highlight of what's going on in the world today, guys, is that just a few days ago, Zohran Mamdani won the mayoral primary in New York City. And Zohran Mamdani is an old school, dyed-in-the-wool socialist. Of course, he's a very young man. He's 33. And he defeated Andrew Cuomo. He defeated a number of very high-profile individuals. And a lot of people are scared. A lot of investors, a lot of millionaires, a lot of the people that make New York wealthy are scared. And in fact, it says here on Zero Hedge, people are congratulating him. A New York business owners plan to flee both the city and the state if Mamdani wins. We may consider closing our supermarkets and selling the business, said 76-year-old billionaire John Katsimadis of Gristedes Supermarkets, adding, we have other businesses, thank God we have other businesses. He also suggested that his real estate conglomerate Red Apple Group may move to New Jersey too. There's a possibility that we move our corporate offices to New Jersey. Why not? Many people are fleeing, and many even Democrats are saying, how could this have happened? And guys, how does a socialist win in the greatest city of capitalism in the world, in the greatest city of wealth, at least in the history of the world? And it begs a deeper question of what has happened, because if you think this is bad, guys, you ain't seen nothing yet. A lot of radicals, even people more radical than Mamdani, are set to win here in 2027 in the upcoming elections. And why is that? Well, it's because the young people are living a situation that the boomers and the previous generations just have no idea about. I remember a boomer that I was talking to a few years ago said that, when I was 17, I left my parents, I had a nice place to stay, and I bought a car. And many young people today struggle to buy cars. Well, if you look at the proportion of their income that, say, the boomers spent on an apartment or a car, it was about 1/9 or 1/10 of their income. Whereas the proportion of income that this generation, Generation X, or even the millennials are spending on housing and cars and so forth, it's half or more than half their income. You can look this up on ChatGPT. The economy, while nominal wages and nominal prices and numbers have gone up, the real wages have gone way down since the 70s. So these boomers who are talking about, when I grew up and I did this, it was absolutely not the same. It is a lot harder to eke out a living now. And the people who are suffering now are the young people. And one of the major issues of Mamdani, I think, winning in New York is that, for example, all of the mayoral candidates were asked, what is the country that you would like to visit besides the United States? Many of them said Israel. And this is another issue because many of the young people are sick and tired of our blind support and pouring resources into other countries, aka Israel and Ukraine, while we can't afford our basic needs. And you know what Mamdani said? Mamdani said, I don't want to go anywhere. I want to stay in New York. I want to help New York. And Marjorie Taylor Greene was on with Tucker Carlson, who's just getting better and better. Tucker Carlson is actually growing and becoming better every single day. And he has a very libertarian outlook, even though he may not describe it as such. And I just want you to watch this little line of questioning with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker Carlson. By the way, I hope that we have a ticket in the next elections, I believe 2028, 2029, with someone like Thomas Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene. I think we can actually start to have an America First agenda in an election like that. We can start to counter some of the socialism. But listen to what she says.
Why is it hard to talk about domestic economics?
I don't know. Apparently they don't know how to fix it. Well, look who he was running against. He's looking, I mean, the failed mayor, Andrew Cuomo, look at him. He was governor. Yeah. Right. That really never solved anyone's problems. They already had him, and they still have the same problems. Right. They're still poor. They can't afford life. They can't afford to move up in the world. And so they looked at Andrew Cuomo and like, why am I going to vote for him? He's not going to make my life better. And so they look at this man who's been in our country for what, 6 years?
Yeah.
6 years. So he's foreign born. He's a socialist, and he's promising to empty the prisons and do all kinds of crazy things. And he's talking to them on their level and talking about the problems they are facing, relating to them with the problems they're facing. So these young people have no choice but to turn to this.
I agree.
And it is a failure. It is literally a failure of the Republican Party. I think the Republican Party has completely failed. And it makes me so angry, Tucker. And I can't, and if we don't fix these problems to the point where young people are turning to crazy socialists, it's going to get worse.
We deserve it.
It's literally going to get worse, and it'll be gone. I don't think we could ever get it back.
Well, it's just kind of weird because Fox News tells us that the real threats are abroad or there are Iranian sleeper cells in the United States. It seems to me the real threat to the United States is the collapse of its cities, of its population centers where the most people live. I don't think the only person in the New York City mayor's debate to say he wanted to focus on New York City. The only person in the New York City mayor's debate
he was the only
to say
person
he wanted to focus on New York City. All the candidates were asked if you could visit a foreign country, what would it be? And they, of course, all had an answer. I think most said Israel. Great. And he said, I wouldn't go anywhere. I'd stay in New York. And like, if I want to meet Jewish constituents, I go to their synagogues, their homes, or whatever. But I'd be here in New York. When people are really frustrated, when the system they live under fails them, they listen to voices that they shouldn't listen to or wouldn't listen to under any other circumstance. Like, how did Al Sharpton get to be the leader of Black America or whatever? I mean, it's like it's a thing. Mm-hmm. Desperate people tend to go to crappy leaders, I think.
Desperate people.
I just can't get over what happened in our biggest city this week, the very same week that everybody in D.C. is focused thousands of miles away on the greatest threat we face, Iran's nuclear program. I want to run that.
No.
Iran doesn't even want a nuclear bomb.
Like, why do we have to say it?
No, right. It's dumb. But at the same time that everybody was looking to Iran, our largest city had a Democratic primary, effectively the mayor's race. And a 32-year-old socialist who wants government-run grocery stores gets elected. He's going to likely run our biggest city.
Yeah,
in the country,
New York.
And it's like, why did that happen? Is it because people are so desperate for government-run grocery stores, or love socialism, or love foreign-born midwits running their cities?
So socialism, guys. It is a very misguided ideology. And Mises, of course, talked about this over 100 years ago, where he basically addressed the calculation problem. And the calculation problem is thus: although there's no really pure socialist system, but it approximates that. And if you have no private property, basically, then you can have no prices, because if there's no private property, there's no real buying and selling. There's simply the government handing out vouchers. So what prices do is they are a natural guidance for the entrepreneur of what to produce, because if the entrepreneur cannot charge high prices in a product and therefore cannot make huge profits, that's a guidance to him to get out of that business and go into another business. And so thereby the market naturally addresses supply and demand through prices. But there's no private property, such as in a socialist commonwealth. There are no prices. So eventually what happens is that the government tries to guess, even with artificial intelligence, But even artificial intelligence can't do this because desires and wants and needs are constantly changing in one person and in demographic groups. So the government tries its best. They say, okay, we need to make such amount of toilet paper. We need to make such amount of butter. But naturally, there arise gluts and shortages. There's too much produced here. There's too little produced there. And it may take a little while, but what eventually happens is what we saw in the Soviet Union, what we saw in Venezuela. And that is that there are no products because no one knows what to produce. Then there's a crack up boom, the economy dies, and it has to start from the ground up like Soviet Russia. So socialism doesn't work. But guys, this is the major problem that Rothbard and others had with quote unquote libertarian organizations like the Cato Institute. Now, the Cato Institute has influenced a lot of modern Republicans, Ted Cruz Republicans, people like that, Lindsey Graham Republicans. They claim to be free market. But guys, you cannot have a free market. And this is what true libertarians have warned. You cannot have capitalism if there are major inequalities, guys. And capitalism will never lead to inequalities. And we're going to tell you why. You see, what is called capitalism in the United States is simply welfare or socialism for the rich. Huge conglomerates like Walmart or these huge investment banks could not exist in a truly capitalist system because they're protected in this modern government system by barriers that are set up by the government, by laws and by protections and by bailouts, guys. When these banks fail, the government bails them out. So they remain with all the resources, but what happens then is that the resources are not trickling down to the rest of society. They're just staying within and rotating within this elite. And eventually what happens is that nobody has anything. It's like Tucker Carlson was saying, his child they're college age and they're friends with other children, and only a few of them have jobs. There are no real jobs for these young people except for minimum wage jobs, plantation type jobs. And capitalism cannot survive in that environment. Why? Because people are hungry, guys. People are dispossessed. And so they're going to rise up against the system. They're going to create new systems which will fail because they're not according to economic law. But if you want capitalism to survive, you have to have true capitalism. And capitalism is not, just allow the people that sow the resources just to keep the resources, and then we start again from zero. Because our modern American society is not set up for general success, unfortunately. Why? Guys, since my generation, I was basically out of my house at 17 years old with no inheritance. Every other country and culture in the world actually gives inheritance to their children. Many people who came from Mexico, they inherited a house. That doesn't happen here. In other countries, the children remain in the house of the parents until they get married. That doesn't happen here. So you have a bunch of people on their own with no resources at 17, 18 years old. And there's no hand up. There's no growth potential. Even people who join the military, guys, they join the military, then they get out of the military, and there's basically nothing for them. They're working minimum wage jobs. So people don't have a chance to accumulate capital in that very early stage unless they're, on the fast track. And of course, wealthy families, truly wealthy families, they train their children from wealth from the time that they're children. They train them in credit. They train them in negotiation and wealth. But middle class and lower middle class families, they have no idea about that. They just tell their kids, go to college. And going to college now, I knew that it was a huge mistake, and I didn't do that. But many people say, well, go to college and you'll get a job. They're figuring out that they're only getting out of college with hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. And it's probably the worst mistake you can make. Now, in the age of ChatGPT, going to college is the stupidest thing you can do when you have all that knowledge there for free. What we need as a society, of course, as an individual, is different because you can always, through your mindset and through your actions, you can rise above that. But for people that don't know, it's very difficult. So most of the younger people in society, they have no wealth and they have no chance of getting wealth. And guys, housing prices. And this is a perfect issue with the quote unquote capitalism of the day. Companies buy all of these houses. They come in and buy 50, 100, 500 houses, many of them lying fallow, many of them not occupied, not used. And so now there's this problem of homelessness, and a house is simply out of reach for many American families. Are you really surprised that a socialist is now winning? A socialist who's saying, at least I hear you, like Marjorie Taylor Greene said. They're talking about the housing crisis. No other politicians, whether Republican or Democrat, are talking about the housing issue. This gentleman is, he's going to win, and people of his ilk, unfortunately, are going to win because we're not addressing these issues. Now, you have companies buying up the properties, buying up houses. Libertarianism is an anecdote to this, true libertarianism. But he talks about the fact in this book that we don't simply come in and allow everyone to keep their land titles. Rather, it's investigated into. And if someone has stolen that land in the past, that land passes back to its owner. Another interesting aspect is that land and property in libertarian theory are not allowed to simply sit fallow. So if a building is simply bought and then lies fallow, then squatters can come in and they can transform that building through their labor and through their simply living there and possessing it, and then the property transfers over to them as owners. I think that would be a good start to solving this housing crisis, guys, because it's this housing crisis and the lack of ability of people to afford things that is leading to this socialist takeover, which I believe could happen in short order if we don't address this, guys. So I was asking ChatGPT, like, how do we make money from this? How do we invest in this? And I asked ChatGPT, I said, Mamdani, a socialist, may win as mayor of New York, because I think no matter what happens, there's a play in which investors like us can make money. Many billionaires and investors are afraid. How much power would he have to undermine capitalism? How much power would Mamdani actually have to undermine capitalism? And is this indicative of a trend we need to watch? Will someone radical win in 2027? I think it could happen. Most importantly, while others are panicking, how do we make money? What public companies or other securities could benefit from Mamdani in New York or a trend towards socialism? We have to watch all trends. We have to find the benefit. And by the way, guys, AI is an indispensable tool, I believe, not because it's good or bad, but because it's here. And if you're an investor and you're not using some simple form of AI, large language model, ChatGPT, you're going to be left behind, unfortunately. So I'm using these tools to try to surface ideas. And then, of course, we do our own research, we follow our gut, we follow our intuition. Knowing my approach of making big leverage bet with options, what is our play? How do we get rich from this? So, says fear is a frequent companion of capital, but fear is often mispriced. A mayor, even one with bold ideological ambitions, is not a central planner in the Soviet Union. So he's not going to have absolute power, obviously. He doesn't control the Fed. He doesn't direct global capital flows. So I think his actual impact on Wall Street, even though Wall Street is in New York, it's going to be minimal, but there's a psychological impact there. But what he does control, municipal contracts, housing policy, police budgets, public sector employment, real estate permitting, these things can have signal, or they can signal seismic shifts in the moral and economic narrative of a city. And New York is not just any city, it's symbolic capital of global finance. So that huge psychological aspect there. So yeah, his power is limited in scope, but unlimited in symbolism. So I ask, are we seeing a new trend? Of course, we already have Ms. Cortez and others who are very radical, although I see them as sort of fake socialists because they don't stand up for the issues that matter. But anyway, absolutely, Mamdani is not an anomaly. Absolutely, Mamdani is not an anomaly. He's an early echo. look across the Western world. Discontent with wealth, so like we just said, wealth inequality, inflation, housing crises, and the erosion of trust in institutions is maturing. The pendulum swings. Neoliberalism has lost its glow. It's lost its glow for this generation who's now hundreds of thousands of dollars in student debt and can't afford a house. I was talking to a pharmacist, guys, and these are people on the upper end of the income scale who, first of all, said, I'm not paying my student debts. Her student debts are just crippling, even with the money she makes. And she's saying, I cannot see when I'll be able to get a house. With these housing prices, I cannot see when I will be able to get a house. Imagine someone who's not that fortunate and is just an everyday worker. How are they going to even see the hope of getting a house? So when a socialist offers them some light at the end of the tunnel, you don't think they're going to vote for a socialist? 2027, and if Trump does not honor his promises, then the cards are still on the table there. And if we continue having this foreign policy that's just beholden to the Israel lobby and just beholden to other foreign interests, I don't think they win either. I think there's now a blue wave. And it's not just your run-of-the-mill Democrats, guys. It's got to be a radical socialist. It's not what I want to happen. This is what I see could happen if we continue down the trajectory that we're in. But says, we could very well see populism, but from the left this time, guys, rather than the right. So the important question, while others are panicking, how do we make money? What securities, public companies, or derivatives stand to benefit from a socialist shift in New York or a broader tilt? When ideologies shift, fortunes are made not by fighting the trend, but by positioning around the periphery of it. Here are a few strategic things. Now, number one, public housing explosion. And this is a good thing that could come from this. Mamdani and his ilk will push for large-scale public housing. Play, materials, infrastructure, and housing construction firms that win public contracts. We'll have to keep our eye out on that. Look into companies like Marietta Materials, Vulcan Materials, or even rental-focused REITs, real estate investment trusts like Avalon Bay, if voucher programs expand. We'll have to do our due diligence research into this and see how we can find options plays around this. But this is just a general surfacing of ideas. If you have any ideas, please put them in the comments so we can all benefit from one another here. Number two, municipal tech vendors. A socialist city needs to administer programs. And by the way, Mamdani is talking about public grocery stores. So we will have elements of socialism in the city. Who benefits from this, guys? If there's cheaper housing or free housing, would it befit some young people to actually move to New York City to take advantage of that housing? It's another idea. And ironically, the bureaucracy still runs on tech contractors. Play, ServiceNow, Palantir, yes, they already work with many governments. I think Palantir is a winner no matter which way you go on the scale, whether it's the nightmare surveillance, whether it's AI, whether it's this, Palantir stands to win. It's definitely something to research into. Or Tyler Technologies, which serves state and local governments. Green New Deal type spending. Leftist administrations will go big on climate. This is just if in the future we have a leftist populist wave. Next era energy, Brookfield Renewable, or Fluence Energy. Those are all things that are going to be on our radars. Number four, education and job training expansion. Socialists invest in education and job transition programs. Online education companies that serve public systems, Chegg, Coursera, or small cap edit tech companies. Unintended consequences. Now, here's where the wealthy start taking back a little bit of their autonomy. Private security, luxury real estate, and escape routes. They want to escape, and if they're staying in New York, they want to be secure from now the socialist rabble, so to speak, that may be coming in. The rich don't stay to argue, they move or protect. Play, ADT, Axon for private security search. I think these could be good companies to look at no matter what happens, guys, just because of the fluid situation on the ground everywhere. Constellation Brands. Wealthy don't stop drinking, of course. They might drink more. You might want to have a drink. Miami luxury real estate investment trusts, or even private aviation companies like Wheels Up. It's a penny stock, UP, but watch it. We'll be watching. Optionality. What's going to be the big leverage play? Because as you know, in geopolitical investing, and this is the Geopolitical Investing Cafe, I'm looking for that big leverage bet. I think in the next segment, we'll talk about what's coming up in Iran. I think that's going to play a huge part in that. You love options. Here's the thesis. Long-dated calls on public housing contractors, if you believe Mamdani or his influence scales. Leaps on tech enablers. So these are leap options that are for long-term, that we're going to bet long-term that the price is going to go up a year or more, and then we're going to cash in on the leverage of that with leap options of municipal systems like now, TYL. I think that's a good idea. We'll have to, another thing, if you're going to use AI, make sure you research all the sources. Make sure you research the trends. It's not just something that you can give up your autonomy to, because AI a lot of times hallucinates. As RFK learned when they put out that report, they put out a lot of references, but they were false references. It's happened to me a lot. Always do your due diligence. AI is not a replacement for your human rationality. It is an aid. It is a tool. It's something that can make it quicker, but you still have to do your due diligence, and we will be doing that on this. Put spreads on NYC luxury real estate rates. If you expect upper class flight, those prices are going to go down. That's definitely something to look at. I'm afraid it may be already priced in, but we'll research that. So keep getting curious, guys. No matter what happens, no matter if there's a socialist takeover, a left populist takeover, there's always going to be some way to benefit. Napoleon Hill said, every adversity carries the seeds of an equal or greater benefit. It is yin and yang. There's always a benefit. Our job as investors, as curious people, is to always look for the benefit. So, next, Iran, guys. I haven't had a podcast since this whole debacle with Iran. And here's my general take on what happened over the last 3 or 4 weeks. Everyone says, well, Trump knew that everything was going to happen, so on and so forth. Negotiations were set up for that Sunday, the weekend of the bombing. Negotiations were set up in Qatar. We were about to have the final round of negotiations. Israel bombed. I think Trump and the Trump administration were totally blindsided. At least Trump was. And I think Trump was very angry with the fact that Netanyahu went behind his back. We already know that Trump and Netanyahu do not have a great relationship. Trump was caught talking about Netanyahu because Netanyahu, he thinks that every American president is his servant, is his, we're not going to use the word, but is his subordinate, so to speak. Trump is not going to be the subordinate of anybody, but Netanyahu thought that by bombing Iran, he could force Trump's hand into a war. So Trump, with his strategic mind, and Trump may not be book smart, but he is very wise, he's very smart, streetwise. He thought about how can we outwit Israel at their own game. So he made it seem like he was going to wait 2 weeks to decide what to do. Everyone knew that this was a ploy. I thought that this was just a ploy and he was going to use it to attack. And more importantly, Israel thought this. We bombed the 3 nuclear sites, guys. The United States did. Of course, I was totally against the war. Every libertarian is anti-war. And we must hold whoever is in power to account for that. We must advise them not to go to war because our main focus, our main job is stopping war, because war destroys lives. It destroys economic value. Completely against the non-aggression principle, which is the main principle of libertarianism. I believe what Trump did, he contacted Iran, he told them, move your uranium, because we still want you to have the opportunity to have a nuclear program for peaceful purposes, which is all Iran ever wanted. Iran has put out fatwas saying that they do not want nuclear weapons. It is against their religion of Shia Islam. They do not want nuclear weapons. They've never wanted nuclear weapons. It's always been a lie. They want power for their population. Trump said, what we'll do, you'll move these out. We'll bomb your nuclear production sites. He did that. Everyone knows they didn't destroy anything. Even Israel knows. But then what did Trump do? He declared mission accomplished. He declared victory. He declared that the United States was not going into war. And he forced Israel to declare victory. Checkmate. Because when Israel declared victory, after that, they would have no obligation, or they would have no justification, rather, to go in and attack Iran again. So Trump basically ended this war through this clever strategy. That's my belief. And we've always said on our geopolitical investing channel that Trump is going to be the one to initiate and to agree upon a lasting peace between the United States and Iran. And when that happens, guys, business is going to boom. I have had a thesis for investment since the last 3 weeks. I've had to amend it a little bit. We are going to have a whole podcast on that, on the Iran play. It's going to be a lot of business. There's going to be a lot of investment opening up. And I think this could be the once in 1 year, once in 2 years, huge trade that's going to make us 10, 100 times our money. Be looking out for that, guys. So thank you so much for watching the Javier Novoa Show. We're going to try to do this on a regular basis. And we'll keep watching world events. We'll keep watching how to make more money. And we'll keep putting out libertarian values. Until next time, guys.